1994, The Rise and Rise of the Administrative State. Gary S. Lawson, Boston University School of Law. The post-New Deal administrative state is unconstitutional, and its validation by the legal system amounts to nothing less than a bloodless constitutional revolution. The original New Dealers were aware, at least to some degree, that their vision of the national government's proper role and structure could not be squared with the written Constitution. 3. The administrative process. James Landis's classic exposition of the New Deal model of administration fairly drips with contempt for the idea of a limited national government subject to a formal tripartite separation of powers. Faced with a choice between the administrative state and the Constitution, the architects of our modern government chose the administrative state, and their choice has stuck. There is a perception among some observers, however, that this post-New Deal consensus has recently come under serious legal attack, especially from the now-departed Reagan and Bush administrations. But though debate about structural constitutional issues has clearly grown more vibrant over the past few decades, the essential features of the modern administrative state have, for more than half a century, been taken as unchallengeable postulates by virtually all players in the legal and political worlds, including the Reagan and Bush administrations. The post-New Deal conception of the national government has not changed one iota, nor even been a serious subject of discussion since the revolution of 1937.7. Part 1 of this article sketches, in purely descriptive fashion, some of the most important ways in which the modern administrative state, without serious opposition, contravenes the Constitution's design. Many elements of this design remain poorly understood, even after more than 2 centuries, and my brief discussion here is unlikely to be satisfying. Nonetheless, my discussion at least touches on such important issues as the scope of Congress's legislative powers, the contours and constitutional source of the non-delegation doctrine, the character of the unitary executive created by Article 2, and the extent to which administrative adjudication is inconsistent with Article 3. Part 2 briefly ponders some possible responses to the enormous gap between constitutional meaning and constitutional practice. For those of us for whom the written Constitution, as validly amended, is the only Constitution, the seemingly irrevocable entrenchment of the post-New Deal structure of national governance raises serious doubts about the utility of constitutional discourse. The death of constitutional government. The United States Congress today effectively exercises general legislative powers in contravention of the constitutional principle of limited powers. Moreover, Congress frequently delegates that general legislative authority to administrative agencies, in contravention of Article 1. Furthermore, those agencies are not always subject to the direct control of the President, in contravention of Article 2. In addition, those agencies sometimes exercise the judicial power, in contravention of Article 3. Finally, those agencies typically concentrate legislative, executive, and judicial functions in the same institution, in simultaneous contravention of Articles 1, 2, and 3. In short, the modern administrative state openly flouts almost every important structural precept of the American constitutional order. Of course, in this day and age, discussing the doctrine of enumerated powers is like discussing the redemption of imperial Chinese bonds. There is now virtually no significant aspect of life that is not in some way regulated by the federal government. This situation is not about to change. There is now virtually no significant aspect of life that is not in some way regulated by the federal government. This situation is not about to change. This situation is not about to change.
Shut your weird anus up.
Justice Gorsuch?
General, let me suggest to you that perhaps Congress has delegated some legislative power to these agencies. Let's just hypothesize that. And let's hypothesize, too, that this court has taken a hands-off approach to that problem through something called the intelligible principle doctrine, which has grown increasingly toothless with time. is the answer, perhaps, to reinvigorate the intelligible principle doctrine and recognize that Congress cannot delegate its legislative authority? Is the water warm, General?
Sorry, what was the last? I couldn't hear the last bit.
Is the water warm?
Is the water warm? Suffice to say, let me say one thing in response to that. It is much easier to cure. Obviously, members of this court have debated the scope of the non-delegation doctrine. The challenge of finding the right standard there is something we've discussed in the past. Here, though, this wolf comes as a wolf, right? I mean, the restriction on executive power is right there in the statute. It's easy to remedy by excising or removal restriction.
There are a lot of wolves around here, General. That one thing our framers knew is that every political actor seeks to enhance its own power. We all know that to be true from our own experiences. And this court, as part of this bargain, has allowed these agencies to exercise both executive and legislative. Justice Sutherland, whose name hasn't been invoked around here in quite a while, his language about quasi-legislative and quasi-judicial and quasi-this powers. And this court has allowed that for a very long time. And if we're not going to allow it any longer, I take the point that this has allowed a bargain where a lot of legislative power has moved into these agencies. But if they're now going to be controlled by the president, it seems to me all the more imperative to do something about it. Is the water warm?